The address of Ken Holum, Assistant Secretary of Interior for Power and Water, Department of Interior, Washington, D.C.
Felt that we had to get in touch with him to tell him what we wanted or what we thought farmers should have or were entitled to, because I knew that Ken Holum, as a farmer, knew instinctively what was good for farmers and what farmers should have. Ken has served in many capacities, from the time that he was in the South Dakota legislature through many other governmental and civic duties that he has taken care of, offices that he's held, and now in Washington, D.C. as Assistant Secretary of Interior for Power and Water, Department of Interior, Washington, D.C., Under Secretary to Stuart Udall. I have this to say, Ken, though. You know, you've been gone for a couple of years. Times change, and now around South Dakota, when they speak of you, they call you John Holum's father. You see? But in any event, Ken, we're glad that you come back to be with us today, and I know of no one that I'd rather introduce to this convention than Ken Holum from Interior Department. Ken?
Thank you, President Ben, distinguished directors of the South Dakota Farmers Union, my South Dakota friends. It's a great privilege, pleasure for me to be here this afternoon. I'm very happy to be here. You're a good president, and I've known Ben Radcliffe for a long time. He was very kind and generous in his introduction. He said nothing, however, that pleased me more than to say he's our own Ken Holum, because I am very happy to be here as a member of the South Dakota Farmers Union, as the father of your new editor, and I'm glad that the Holum family is having an opportunity to work, and I trust work constructively with this fine organization here in the state. I'm just very happy to be here. I'm a member of the Farmers Union. As Ben has said, I've been a member of the South Dakota legislature. As a member of the South Dakota legislature, I was always proud of the position, the attitude, and the work of the South Dakota Farmers Union. Proud of its splendid leadership and its broad point of view. At the same time, and it's been more than confirmed during 2.5 years in Washington, I was also proud to be associated not just with the South Dakota Farmers Union, but with the National Farmers Union. I don't think there's any organization in this country, I don't think there's any individual in this country who speaks from a stronger base and with more authority and conviction. All of the programs that are good for people in South Dakota, good for people in the United States, and good for people in the world, and we have to be worldwide citizens in 1963. Than the National Farmers Union and its principal spokesman at the national level, your good national president, Jim Patton. And I'm happy today that I'm here in South Dakota, because I'm going to be here in this arena this evening to be thrilled with you, and we'll be thrilled, I'm sure, to hear this eloquent spokesman for programs that are good for all America and good for all the world at your dinner here this evening. Now, you're here conducting the annual business of the South Dakota Farmers Union. Before you return to your farm home and ranches all across our state, you will have charted the course for our organization in policy matters and legislative matters for the coming year. Your annual meeting is a time for reviewing the past and surveying the future, for sober reflection as well as firm resolution. How far we progress today will largely depend upon how much we learn from yesterday's failures and how we apply the lessons of experience. 100 years ago, President Lincoln stated in his deeply troubled times, "The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy future." In the swiftly moving days of human evolution, the simple truth of this statement stands out in bold relief. Each year, each decade bring new challenges, new complexities to the old problems. To meet them requires new knowledge, new resolution, new techniques. So fast is the pace of our time. that to maintain last year's economic level as a nation is to fall behind. To lack an educational opportunity is to place our young people at a disadvantage in the inevitable increasing competitive situations. What was good enough for me in schooling 30 years ago is not good enough today for your children or mine. They must have the advanced intellectual tools so necessary to understand the trend of world events, the responsibilities of a great and free nation in the atomic age, and the economic and social requirements of well over 300 million Americans in less than 2 decades. What I'm talking about is the growing responsibilities of citizenship. South Dakota citizenship, American citizenship, world citizenship. We're farmers, you and I, but that does not mean that we can confine our interest to the business of agriculture. The world does not stop at the farm gate. We have learned as Farmers Union members that we have important responsibilities to our communities, our state, and our nation. We believe in and we work for the enactment of sound farm price support programs that will enable us to earn a fair return on our work and investment. We know that prosperous farmers are imperative to a sound economy here at home. But we also know that intelligent citizenship requires that we be equally concerned about fair wages for workers and a fair return for the businessman. New York City, Detroit, Chicago, and Los Angeles are hundreds of miles from South Dakota. But the wages and salaries that are earned by the millions of people in these and other cities in our nation have a definite and profound impact on the prices you receive for wheat, corn, beef, and hogs. Nor how can we forget the needs of the old and the sick. As the richest nation in the world, we can and ought to devote a portion of our material resources to the health and care of our aged citizens. What more just reward could there be for those who have given the years of their lives to help make this country what it is today? A nation which spends $40 billion for defense each year can afford a very small fraction of that amount for its elderly citizens in their hour of need. The answer is we can and we will. The role of courageous, decisive leadership is never easy. This is especially true in the emotionally tangled issue of civil rights and civil liberties. But the torch of liberty and justice that we hold high for peoples of the world to see and follow cannot shine as brightly as it should if through indifference or overt action a person or segment of our population is restricted in his right to vote or in job or educational opportunities because of his race or the color of his skin. A number of basic questions face us today that we just can't dodge. Must we not, as a people who pride ourselves in being a Christian nation, practice the Christian ethic? Are we not our brother's keeper? Can we afford to handicap ourselves in dealing with the emerging nations throughout the world who are not white but colored and are moving toward the critical political decisions of which way they should go in this world of ours? Our Constitution and the Bill of Rights was written for the protection of all men who are citizens of the United States, not just a select few. Our organization has steadfastly supported this position. You have good reason to be proud of your membership. You should all be grateful that we have in President John F. Kennedy an understanding and courageous leader who is not afraid to take these well-reasoned actions necessary to the protection of the constitutional rights of all Americans. By so doing, he is strengthening the cause of freedom and thwarting our opponents in the arena of international politics who attempt to prey upon our weaknesses. America's outer strength depends upon its ability to correct its inner weaknesses. We must have free and critical debate of national policy issues. This is indispensable to our political system and to the education of our people. But equally important is that our discussions be based upon fact rather than hearsay or prejudice. We must be alert to those few groups and their spokesmen who attempt to sow the seeds of distrust and hate against other American citizens with whom they disagree, who malign the character of the presidents from both political parties and seemingly look upon their national government as an alien power. We should not be discouraged because by these activities we must realize that there is never a perfect society, nor will it ever be from the standpoint of complete unanimity. Neither would we have it that way. There will always be healthy disagreement. This is good. In addition, there will periodically be bitter and irrational statements hurled from either the far right or the far left. Free speech is the right of everyone. It must always be vigorously defended. Our job is to recognize these movements, sift them out, evaluate their programs, and rebut them with truth and reason. Far-out radicalism has never succeeded in America, and it never will, as long as we and organizations such as the one that we belong to remain alert and strong and vigilant. But we cannot lose sight of the fact that tremendous amounts of wealth are supporting some of these activities today. For the last 2.5 years, as President Radcliffe said, I've had the opportunity of serving with the administration of President Kennedy as Assistant Secretary of Interior. I am very happy to have this opportunity to work in this important field of responsibility for the people of our country. When President Kennedy took office in January of 1961, he pledged the energies of his administration to the cause of world peace with honor. The effectiveness of his efforts in pursuing this, the most crucial task of our time, is evident in the test ban treaty recently negotiated with the Soviet Union. Lest we lose our perspective of this highly significant event, however, we must constantly remind ourselves that it's only a start. But we have taken the first difficult step, which has been so long in coming. We have demonstrated to the world our keen interest in breaking the deadly arms race. We have indicated by this action our sincere willingness to take other positive steps towards relaxing world tensions. Some have expressed great fear that the test ban treaty will cause us to grow complacent. I don't share this fear at all. I have great faith in the intelligence of the American people and their ability to make mature judgments. I believe by far the great majority of our people are anxious to walk the paths of peace. But to work for peace does not mean that we must degenerate into stupidity. We know the nature of our adversary. We're not going to drop our guard. Nor do I defer the decision to permit the sale of wheat to the Soviet Union. I believe that this is morally and politically a wise decision. What better way is there to convince the people of the world that we are concerned with the problems of humanity? What better way is there to dramatize the success of our free agricultural system and the failure of the Soviet collectives and government-owned state farms? As President Kennedy said, we should never negotiate from fear, but we'll never fear to negotiate. American farmers have created with their efficiency, hard work, and a helping hand from Providence the tremendous national asset of adequate food supplies. What sense would it make to hold this in storage bins when it can be sold on a legitimate cash basis at a time when we need an inflow of gold and cash to help balance a payment situation? To the credit of the Kennedy administration, we are putting abundance to use in ever-increasing quantities at every opportunity throughout the world. While problems of international relations demand the interest of us all, less dramatic yet very important national problems must be met as well. I particularly have in mind the ever-present need for conservation and development of our land and water and other natural resources. Twice during the past 14 months, the President has traveled throughout the West alerting the people to the cause of conservation. Twice during 2 years and 9 months in office, he has sent special messages to the Congress urging resource development and pointing out the most urgent needs that face us in recommending legislative action. Here in South Dakota, especially among the South Dakota Farmers Union membership, we know the value of the federal power programs. In these high, droughty plains and in the more arid western regions, water is a precious commodity. How we put it to use and to what extent will determine the future of our state and others as well. Across the nation, the pressure on our fresh water supply are mounting at a phenomenal rate. Our exploding population numbers, vastly increased industrial demands, air conditioning, and many other modern-day uses are virtually skyrocketing water needs. Along with this sharp increase in demand come the questions of water quality, reuse of water, in some cases over and over again, become vital factors in conservation. At the present time, America is using 300 billion gallons of water every day. By 1980, the predictions are that we'll be using twice that figure. And by the year 2000, just 37 years away, we will nearly triple that amount. In electric power, it's the same story. The demand for more kilowatts is rising rapidly as the years move ahead. By 1980, the entire power industry must triple its present capacity to meet anticipated demands. Our security as a free nation depends upon our ability to meet these requirements. We cannot have a first-rate economy and a second-rate electric power system. We cannot wait for the spigots to run dry and expect the problem to be corrected on the following day. It takes time to develop fresh water supplies. Dams and storage reservoirs take years to plan and construct. Tomorrow's resource problems have to be met now. For years, here in South Dakota, we've been using young people from the state because of the lack of adequate job opportunities. Many of us are concerned over the export of our homegrown talent and brains. It is not unusual to meet outstanding persons from professional and business people in other cities and states who were born and educated in South Dakota. Our economic loss here in South Dakota has been some other state, some other community's gain. Solution to this profound problem must begin with much fuller utilization of the two great natural resources we possess, our land and our water. My capacity as Assistant Secretary of the Interior for Water and Power Development, I have seen at firsthand what the great developments in California, Arizona, Idaho, Oregon, Colorado have done for these and other western states. Every farmer that's on a rural electric cooperative line in South Dakota knows what Missouri River Power means to this state. But the Missouri River Power Project is a multi-purpose project, planned to serve other needs too, such as irrigation with power paying the way. I'm confident that we will soon be moving ahead with this fuller development because of the concerted efforts put forth by this administration of the Department of Interior in the past 2.5 years. Shortly after taking office in 1961, President Kennedy signaled a forward movement for resource development. One of his early actions was to send the Garrison Diversion Project in our sister state of North Dakota to Congress, recommending that it receive favorable consideration. He issued an unprecedented public statement endorsing the Garrison Diversion Project. But the Missouri River Basin Project, over which we assumed management in 1961, was in deep financial trouble. Power revenues had not been coming in as anticipated, principally because the water had not been available in the amounts expected. Repayment of the project was in arrears. Furthermore, because of certain policy decisions made by the previous administration in 1954, a much heavier financial burden had been placed upon power than before that time. I'm not saying making this as a partisan statement, but simply to be sure that you have all the facts available to you. The Interior Committee of both houses of the Congress warned us that they would not act on any future development in the Missouri Basin until we could demonstrate to them that we had taken the necessary steps to make this great project here in the 8 states of the Missouri Basin a financially sound and solvent project. The Department has been deeply concerned about this matter. We began an exhaustive study some time ago under the jurisdiction of the Bureau of Reclamation. It has been a matter of highest priority from both the Bureau's and the Department's standpoint. Our studies have been underway for some time now. In them we have considered every reasonable approach, keeping in mind, of course, as we must and should, the policies of the Congress. We had hoped to have these complex analyses completed by this time and our recommendations sent to the Congress. But computing machines, in spite of their mathematical wizardry, have only one speed. Our economists and technicians have put off their vacations to accelerate the study's completion, but there is a limit to their endurance. Secretary Udall announced in North Dakota last week that the studies will be completed in October, and he's the boss. We do not know the exact figures that the final computations will show, but we are certain now that a modest increase in electric power rates will be necessary to put the Missouri Basin Project on a sound financial basis and remove this barrier to further development. Meanwhile, we have carried out our responsibilities to you in other ways, taking whatever steps we could to manage the invaluable power resource of the Missouri Basin system so as to provide better and more dependable service to our preference customers, effect economies, and increase operating revenues. Most significant from that standpoint was the arrangement signed some months ago with the Basin Electric Cooperative in North Dakota, and all of the electric cooperatives in South Dakota are members of Basin Electric. It will provide an additional $1 million a year of project revenue each year to assist in repayment of the Missouri River Basin Project. From the standpoint of future power supply and the assurance of an abundance of low-cost power for cooperatives in the area, the establishment of Basin Electric and development of lignite coal to the Dakotas is one of the most important achievements in resource development to ever take place in the entire Missouri Basin. In addition, the first pooling agreement between the federal government and the preference customers, principally the Rural Electric Cooperative, has been signed here in the Missouri River Basin. We are proud that South Dakota Rural Electric Cooperatives are vigorous supporters and participants in the pool. Through this arrangement, further economies will be affected, and the people, the member owners of the Rural Electric Cooperatives, will gain a fuller measure of return in efficiency and service. Our concern always is that we discharge our responsibilities to our customers. Because of this, we have worked as closely as possible with rural electric and municipal systems in the Missouri Basin, as well as elsewhere, in meeting future power supply requirements. We've carried out to the best of our ability the great public principles for power marketing outlined by the Congress many years ago and restated by President Kennedy. None of the least of these is the policy of distributing federally generated power as widely as possible to rural and domestic consumers at the lowest possible rates consistent with sound business principle. This policy has been and will continue to be applied vigorously here in the Missouri Basin and the state of South Dakota. I've been talking about, in a rather haphazard way, many of the problems that I think are critical in the field of public policy in 1963. I've done this, made this broad brush approach to you, if you please, because as a member of the South Dakota Farmers Union, I know that you are the kind of people and that we are the kind of an organization that is concerned with all of these broad public policy matters. The Farmers Union, as a voice in liberal voice in public affairs, is a vital necessity in our time. I hope and I know that the South Dakota Farmers Union and the National Farmers Union will never falter in maintaining and building the strength of our organization and maintaining for all to see a liberal, broad program dedicated to good citizenship in South Dakota, good citizenship in this great country of ours, and good worldwide citizenship that's urgently required in 1963. Thank you very much.